Well, hello everyone. I'm on the workbench again with the Roundhouse George, named Wilhelmina. And since I finished the series about the construction of Wilhelmina, it's been a few months. So what I thought I'd do is just come back to Wilhelmina now and give you my thoughts about the locomotive after running it for a few months. It's had a fair bit of running. It's been in steam for a while, so I'd just like to give you my thoughts about the locomotive. Okay, what I want to do is to start off with a couple of perhaps negative points about the locomotive, things that I'm not too pleased about. And the first one has got nothing to do with the technical side of the locomotive. It's all to do with the way I built it. And what I'm not so pleased about is actually the paint job on the boiler sleeve. In this case, it's the boiler sleeve, of course. And if you watch the series, you knew that perhaps you know that I painted the locomotive with an acrylic spray paint that was designed to be used indoors and outdoors. And I followed the instructions with the painting of the various parts, and even after the paint was applied, I actually baked the locomotive the parts in the oven for a fair while. And after that, finished the build and so on and so forth until I did the first steam. And since then, what I've discovered is, in my opinion, this paint is not heat resistant enough. During the first few runs of the locomotive, I noticed the brass dome over the safety valve that gets hot. You perhaps can see that right here there's a mark, an indentation in the paintwork. Okay, there. Can you see that? And that goes all the way around. So I'm not too happy about that. Luckily, once the dome's on, you don't see it too much. You don't really see it. Again, continuing with the paint. Very difficult to see on the camera, but there is a few black pits in the top here. That's obviously from stuff that's coming out of the chimney, and it's pitting the top of the boiler sleeve. I'm not really too bothered about that. It's just I think that will just add to the character of the locomotive in time. But it's another signal that the paint that I used is not really suited for the job at hand. And that's certainly a takeaway for me, because this is the first kit that I built myself, that next time I'm not going to use acrylic paint if I can help it. I'm going to use a 2-pack paint. And I understand you can actually get it in spray cans these days, so I might look into that for the next kit build. Okay, moving on to the second thing that I'm not too happy about is the steam oil lubricator container, the drain. For some reason, I can't get the steam, the lubricator far enough outside so that when you undo the drain, and you try and get a cloth underneath here, some of the water that you drain out after a run, it leaks onto the floor of the cab. So after a while, at the end of a running day, there's a pool of oil on the cab floor, and that's just annoying. And you have to mess around with a stick with a bit of cloth on or something to clean it all off. So what I'll probably do over the winter is I'll try again to try and get that to bring that out, to bring this lubricator, steam lubricator, a little bit towards the edge of the cab, so that the drain, the bolt, is over the end of the cab side. So let's talk about some of the things that have impressed me over these last few months of steaming this locomotive. And the first one is the reliability. Every time that I've been using it, it works every time. No problems at all. The time it takes to warm the water is within acceptable limits for me. Anyway, it's no different from any other loco that I've steamed. It keeps its pressure well. It responds wonderfully to the controls. I get, let's say it's pulling. If it's pulling, I have two coaches. If it's just pulling the two coaches, and I'm running at a quite realistic speed, and I'll talk about that in a second, I've easily got 20 to 25 minutes running time on a flat oval track like we have at the club. What I also like, I can get this to run at, I think, quite low realistic speeds, even with a light load behind it. I don't know how that is possible, but it happens, and it really looks the part. There's nothing worse with 16mm live steam engines, I think, than that they're running like the clappers along the track. Totally unrealistic, I think. And this is a really good locomotive to show off a realistic slow running speed of a narrow gauge locomotive. The other thing that I'm very pleased about is the chuffer in the chimney. It makes a cracking noise. Love it to bits. And actually, to tell you the honesty, this is an FX controller, so you've got the choice of reduced volume and more smoke, or lots of volume and no smoke, or little smoke. And what I do, I just shut both of them off, and I find it produces quite enough smoke normally, and the chuff is brilliant. If anything, I think it's quite high in the chimney. I may consider later on in the winter, if the dimensions of the chuffer and the amount of space in the chimney allows, I might reduce its height in the chimney. Are there actually stuff that I've actually had to change or modify or whatever during the running? The coal in the tender, I've had if you remember the method that I used to add the coal to the wooden base there, I was soaking it with PVA glue and then leaving it overnight and so on, and that worked for the vast majority of the coal pieces on there, no problem at all. But over time, a couple of pieces of coal have come loose, and one of the fire irons came loose as well. So I actually had to fix them back on again with other glue. One of the things I actually had to adjust was the steam regulator linkage here. What was happening, it was I was bringing the control for the steam regulator back to 0, and it was creeping. The locomotive was creeping forward. So what I actually had to do, and with this regulator, 0 if you like, or closed, is upwards. And so what I actually had to do was just lengthen the rod from the servo by 2-3 millimeters, and that meant that the regulator, steam regulator, went more against the 0. Now it's my understanding that in the steam regulator housing there's actually a sort of rubber seal, and over time you may have to adjust the steam regulator because that seal gets bedded in. So that is actually the only things really that I want to that I need to report about the locomotive. It's a cracking locomotive. I love it to bits, and I am very pleased and proud that I took the jump to make it, and I actually made it. My first kit-built locomotive. Quite importantly, the real Wilhelmina, she likes it too, so that's fine. So that's the end of my little summary assessment of life so far with this Roundhouse George kit-built locomotive. You may have noticed that the George was actually resting on this piece of kit. This is my new rolling road. Yeah, they're primarily made, I think, for gauge 1 locomotives, but 16mm gauge, they sit on here quite well. I think it's absolutely well made, and I just thought I'd just go over it with you just to show you guys. Can support 5 axles, which is fine. The bearings are lovely. Look at that. Can't hear anything. And the old system that I was using, even just turning the wheel supports with your finger, that would cause a racket, but you don't get that with this one. It looks like aluminium. It's aluminium, I think, painted aluminium, the main frames. The ends are, looks like perspex, hardened perspex. Don't know whether you can see that, but you can actually see the name of the actual builder. You've got a bit of gauge 1 track at both ends. This is the shorter section, and you've got a longer section at the other end. And these are clamped to the frames with, again, with a bit of, looks like a bit of perspex here. There's rubber feet all along, so it doesn't scratch your table. And this is the other end, just show you the other end, with perspex clamps, if you like, in that groove. See if you can get a close-up. Clamps in that groove there, so you can move it backwards and forwards, or remove it if you'd want to.